morning. Even though the slides here will be in Spanish, I'm going to choose to speak in my native tongue this morning and speak in English, but I look forward to speaking with each and every one of you if you have time later on and answering the questions that you have for me. Protocol having already been established, I'm just going to go ahead and start. But I'd like to start by thanking the government of Ecuador for hosting this conference and doing such an excellent job at it also. You all really should be proud of the way that you've been displaying your culture here so far for the week. A special thanks to the Ministry of Tourism of Ecuador specifically for making all the necessary arrangements and all the other collaborators for this program. My name is Shevaun, and I am the Program Manager for Tourism Security at the 6-Day Secretariat, the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism of the Organization of American States. I'm very happy to be here, not only to represent my organization, and not only because your country is absolutely beautiful, but I can appreciate as much as you all can how important the tourism sector is to the region. I'm originally from the Bahamas, where tourism has always been the major industry and the lifeblood of our country. Without further ado, what I'd like to do this morning is to talk to you all briefly about why tourism security is actually important for our member states and why public-private partnerships are important for this process. And then I'll brief you on what SICTE's tourism security program has been doing in the region for the past few years with the cooperation of the Department of Tourism of the Organization of American States. We'll just give it, actually, I can just go ahead and start in the interest of time while we're getting set up here. One of the reasons why tourism security is so important for our member states is that they see tourism as critical infrastructure. The tourism security program is under the critical infrastructure protection area of the 6-Day Secretariat. Within the context of the OEA, every state determines what is critical to them. And tourism, especially for some of our smaller island states, is specifically critical, though it isn't actually physical infrastructure. The states consider that because of the dependency on the industry and the great importance of it to the country's survival, it's considered critical. So while critical infrastructure protection refers to the preparedness and response to serious incidents that involve the critical infrastructure of the nation or region, tourism security fits within this concept as it deals with ensuring that the tourists are kept safe, and that the countries are prepared to respond to any incident that could affect the industry and to recover quickly from it. Here we are. There we go. So this can be a terrorism or crime-related incident that affects the sector, or even a natural disaster or a health issue. It's really a wide variety of issues that could affect the sector. The next thing is tourism as the economic lifeblood of the region. Many of the countries in the Americas, as my dear colleague Ambassador Diego spoke about earlier, depend on tourism and as a major source of employment, wealth, and a contributor to social progress and economic stability. In the OES member states, tourism can represent as large as 65% of the gross domestic product of the economy. And this leaves behind very small and underdeveloped industries as other sources of economic gains. Additionally, some of the member states actually depend heavily on tourism industry as the main source of its foreign exchange earnings. So the Americas brought in an estimated $163 million, which was an increase from the year before, in 2012, along with the international tourism receipts reaching $213 billion. Sorry, it was 163 million tourists and $213 billion. Given the importance then of this to the economy, anything which affects the performance or effective functioning of the sector must be addressed. So in this context, safety and security in the tourism sector should be addressed in order to protect simply the economy. Another reason Why tourism security is so important to the member states is because the ministers of tourism are now acknowledging that without security, there is no tourism product. The perception of security, whether or not it corresponds to the reality on the ground, is one of the #1 factors that visitors consider when selecting the place to visit or even traveling in general. So visitors are unlikely to travel to a destination if the water supply is unsafe, if the food supply is not trustworthy, or if they feel like they're likely to be victims of crime or violence. Perhaps more than any other economic activity, the success or failure of a tourism destination depends on being able to provide a safe and secure environment for the visitors. We can all recall the unfortunate events of 9/11 and the impact that this perceived absence of security had on our tourism sector in the region, particularly with respect to the visitors arriving from the U.S., which is a major source market for many of the OES member states. At that time, the Caribbean Tourism Organization had estimated that arrivals from the U.S. fell an estimated 20% between September and December 2001. So this was a large impact. What we've learned then is that it isn't just sufficient, it isn't sufficient to put measures in place to try to change crime statistics or the security context in the country, but you also have to have this security as part of your marketing strategy so that it's clearly seen as part of your competitiveness as a destination. Previously, countries were not talking about tourism security as much because it would mean that it was actually recognizing that security was a problem. But now the member states understand more than ever how important it is, even from a marketing standpoint, while they're trying to market this security as a part of their destination, while they're trying to make efforts to address their problems, their security problems. So basically, it's not enough for you to be secure, but people need to see or hear that you are secure as well. So through actions like improving relationships with the media, placing tourism security on the national and regional agendas, these are all good steps to show that you take tourism security seriously. Even something like this conference, and maybe even establishing tourism police units. So the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is the importance of public-private partnerships to tourism security, because this is actually the core, at the core of the program that we have in our OES member states. And one of the benefits of these public-private partnerships is the option of being able to pool resources. And when I say resources, I mean financial, human, equipment, intelligence, information, all of those resources. There's typically more money, as we all know, in the private sector that could act as a resource, but generally the political will and the law enforcement assistance lies within the public sector. So in terms of protecting tourists, there's only so much the government can do because of the lack of financial resources, but the private sector, entities such as hotels and other businesses, since they have a major interest in their guests being secure and safe, they can find creative ways to work with the public sector and use the resources that they have. I'm going to use a successful example which came from one of the past beneficiaries from one of the sick day trainings we had in Mexico. There's a particular area called Enero, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, that was visited. It was a strip that was basically visited by more than about 5 million people a year, and the crime became extremely bad in the area, from robberies, prostitution, a little bit of everything with crime. So what the private sector decided to do was they did an assessment of security in the area to see what it was they needed to change the situation in terms of patrols, lighting, etc., and went to the public sector to form a committee to work on changing that area together. The private sector put in the money for lighting, the public sector did the work to install the lighting and send people to patrol at the time specifically that the private sector indicated were the high crime times when guests were being assaulted. And the private sector also provided meals for the police officers and made them feel like part of the community, and also worked with them to make the communities they lived in safer. So they were able with these efforts to actually bring the crime stats down to 0. And after talking to my colleague Miguel Rico yesterday, who you'll hear from this week, he indicated that now for 4 years now it's been that way. The crime stats have been down and these efforts are continuing. So this is a successful example of how these public-private partnerships can work, especially with sharing the resources. Another thing I wanted to touch on is communication and exchange of information. So the partnership is important because each side has actually valuable information that the other would generally need. As a private sector, when something happens, there's generally a need to call the police. But the private sector also is in a position of having information about things going on at hotels and facilities that only people like their employees, like housekeepers and other internal members would actually know about. So meanwhile, the police may know about threats generally in certain areas. This information exchange that they both have could be very helpful for basically creating a more secure environment for the visitors. The other thing I want to talk about is mutual interest in the same vein of public-private partnerships. So although the tourism industry is mainly a private activity, the private sector still needs the support of law enforcement authorities. There's obviously interest from both the public and private sector in tourism security, especially since it's the economic lifeblood of the country. But however, by partnering more with private sector officials, public officials can even adopt the attitude of tourism providers as if they're providing these services. And this is important for the product, this shared interest and responsibility that they have. And we saw this yesterday in Ecuador with the police who were giving us the tour. You know, they weren't in uniform. We would have thought they were trained tourist guides and ambassadors for their countries. This is excellent. This, I just want to give you an idea of what the organization of American States is, and for those of you who don't know, and also where the tourism security program fits within this. The organization is the oldest regional organization, and it has 4 main pillars which guides its work: democracy, human rights, development, and security. Tourism security falls within the organization's mandates on multidimensional security and also development at the same time. And we work, which is why we work on this program jointly with the Department of Tourism at the OES. This is just a very simplified version of the organization's chart, just to show you where SIGDE, by its acronyms, falls under the chart. If I showed you the larger chart, everybody in here would probably be a little dizzy. But SIGDE is part of the overarching Secretariat for Multidimensional Security, which is comprised of 3 different sections that work in very different but related areas. The Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism, where I work, which is a counterterrorism branch. The Commission for Drug Abuse Control, CCAT by its acronyms in Spanish, and the which is Anti-Drugs Arm, and then the Department of Public Security, which deals with crime in a broader sense. And you'll hear from my colleague Allison from DPS later. These are the main functions of SIGDE, but the main one being to provide technical assistance and training to the 34 OES member states in the various areas in which we work. SIGDE's programs are all broken down into thematic areas, namely border controls, critical infrastructure protection, which brings us here today where the tourism security program is under it, legislative assistance in counterterrorism financing, crisis management and emerging threats, and international cooperation and partnerships, which is intertwined into all of the work that we do. So this is a declaration which gave birth to the Secretariat for Multidimensional Security, which emphasizes this approach in which we see in the tourism security program. So from the OES point of view and that of our ministers of tourism, security should be seen in its broadest sense, not narrowly focusing on crime, violence, and terrorism, but focusing in a manner which captures this multidimensional aspects. I should mention here that the OEA Ministers of Tourism, in their declaration of San Salvador for Sustainable Tourism Development in the Americas in 2011, highlighted the importance of security in the tourism sector and the need to approach it from a multidimensional perspective that considers inter alia, reducing risks associated with natural and man-made disasters, and with the adverse impact of climate change. While the minister singled out some specific areas, tourism security also encompasses other areas such as health and food security, environmental security, including water and sanitation, just all of the risks that you can think of. Okay, the UN World Tourism Organization talks about the connection of tourism security with development, and this is how they define it. And it's important to note that they include within their description that members of the receiving communities of the tourists should be secure as well. So it's not enough just for the visitors to be safe, but citizens and people who work in these areas should also be safe. This is to give you an idea of how the tourism security program came into fruition. There was a pilot project that we did in the Caribbean, which was established when the Cricket World Cup games came around in 2006-2007, where we gave training in tourism security and major events to all the Caribbean countries that were hosting. And by after the project had ended, the program was evaluated, and as a result of the findings, the Secretariat was mandated by the committee to continue providing this technical assistance in this area. Today we have a very active tourism security program and a security for major events program, which is managed by another one of my colleagues. This is a general objective of the tourism security program, and it completely emphasizes this the importance of the public and private partnerships throughout the strengthening process, the capacity building process. These are some more specific objectives of the program, but I want to acknowledge the first one, that the program emphasizes a preventive approach. Countries don't receive the training because of any relation to the amount of crime that they have. What we're trying to do is promote a culture of prevention so that countries are prepared to manage any incidents that could arise at any time. So we also want to highlight that security is just as important as the economic factor tied to tourism. So security should actually be seen as an investment, and this is one of the things that we teach through all of our programs. The program has been geared towards building the capacities to protect generally hotels and other tourism facilities, but these are just some beneficiary areas of the program. The list would vary depending on the type of tourism existing in each location that we visit. In some places, they have a large resort type of tourism. In some, they have an ecotourism. While some places, for example, we did a program in El Salvador, there was more rural and artisanal tourism in the location that we went to. So the focus becomes different depending on which location we're in. This is also not an inclusive list by any means of the private and public sector actors, because it changes depending on the country. But what this highlights is that the importance of investing in security. A lot of times when we go to certain countries, the hotel security managers will indicate that the security is the least funded part of the business, but in reality it should be one of the most important, because it's an investment and it will turn out to be less costly to invest in a security program for the hotels and facilities than to have to lose millions if something happens and they weren't prepared for the incident. So the damage could cost you the whole industry, and this is something that we emphasize. The partnerships, again, are super important. In most of the places that we visit, the relationship sometimes at the beginning between the two sectors, public and private sector, can be described as a tug of war. At the beginning of the class, many times this is the case, but by the end of the course, after working together and sort of building this trust and working towards a common goal and having a chance to hear from them and understand the main issues, the relationship improves. We've had some trainings where committees were formed, and by the end there were agreements signed to continue working together in cooperation. So it's important. We think these partnerships are best built when there's trust between the sectors and when it's not forced, but it happens naturally. This is just a look at the project and how it's designed. There are 3 main phases, which includes a preliminary phase where we have meetings, stakeholder meetings separately between the private sector and then the public sector to sort of gauge what their needs are from the higher level officials from each sector. And then the following day, we actually have a mini preparatory workshop where we sort of present the base curriculum to the more operational level folks to get more of a to incorporate their view within the program. So based on this feedback, the instructors go on to develop a more specialized training course. There's an evaluation component, as in any successful project, there needs to be an evaluation, so that happens as a follow-up afterwards as well. These are just some of the core topics that we cover in the programs, and we give the opportunity to the country to decide also to focus on other additional topics. In some, we've had needs for behavioral detection for all of the hotel staff and public sector. Some have asked for more focus on conducting security audits. We've had practical exercises with that. And the class also culminates in a tabletop exercise to test the crisis management capabilities. One of the things we're now trying to do is get the media involved as well into the programs because they have such a major role and can be more beneficial to the process. So as we indicated the importance of covering all the aspects of tourism security, each training normally has an expert panel at the end where international and local experts cover info on any of the topics that will complement the program that we may not have covered. So it can be health, we cooperate with PAHO a lot, the Pan American Health Organization. It can be sanitation issues, disaster management, and other requests by the host country that would complement the curriculum. One example, in Antigua, we did a program there. They were really interested in looking into establishing a tourism policing unit, but had no idea how to start it. So we brought someone from the Bahamas who was involved in creating a tourism unit to actually discuss the benefits and how to basically get started. These are just going to be some pictures of some different courses, and I wanted to highlight this one because this particular course actually sort of demonstrated the importance of having preparation and plans, being prepared for the unexpected. So this program was done in Haiti, and as Miguel Rico was one of the instructors in that program, and as he indicated, they asked them if they had any crisis management plans for earthquakes. And the participants sort of laughed it off and said that, they don't have earthquakes in Haiti. And just a few months later, there was an earthquake in Haiti, as you understand how catastrophic that was, and many of the, destroyed most of the infrastructure, and many of the participants themselves died, unfortunately. So this is a sad example about how being prepared for the unexpected is important. We found generally that many of I'll just flip through these while I'm talking, many of the countries, particularly a lot of them in the Caribbean, have existing crisis management plans to deal with disasters like hurricanes, but not to deal with other criminal or terrorist incidents. We've been in just about 20 different tourism destinations over the years. these are just a few of our international partners who we collaborate with in one way or another to have this build a successful program. This is just a map of the locations that we've had training in so far. So we've trained about over 1,200 officials from the public and private sector. These are some of the highlights that we've had in the program so far. What we hope to continue to do is to continue to build a network of experts in the region. There's a wealth of experience already in the region that we find in every location. And so the idea is to soon have our own tourism security trainers in each country. So many of the, today we already have quite vibrant network in Latin America, and many of them are here present this week. And they'll be sharing some of their experiences with you on tourism security. And we hope to continue to develop this. One of the things that we're also very proud of that's up there on the screen is that the UN has recognized our program as one to be replicated in other destinations in the world, particularly starting in Asia. They've indicated that the 6-day security, tourism security program demonstrates that the vulnerabilities of the tourism sector can be converted into strengths, thus making for a very creative training model. And additionally, they've noted that the program is unique because it successfully addresses the security needs as well as the development needs. So what we hope to be able to do moving forward is to continue to work in those destinations that depend heavily on tourism and sort of build the awareness of the importance of tourism security there and preparation and planning. And then also to work on those destinations that are a little bit more advanced in creating security plans and crisis management plans for complete destinations and not just for facilities, and also to do some specific training on specific risks as requested by the countries. We had our first pilot with this in Costa Rica, 2013, yeah, that was last year, where we did training specifically on kidnapping for the public and private sector in Costa Rica, and that was led by the FBI. So with that, I will actually end, but we do look forward to continue collaborating with new and existing partners and member states and to make this region safer for our visitors and citizens. I certainly look forward to meeting people today, and most importantly, I look forward to returning to